Welcome back. We are looking at India's relations with the 5 Central Asian states, and we continue to have with us our 2 distinguished experts. Dr. Santana, Mr. Stobden referred to the fact that India's footprint has suddenly enlarged in Central Asia, particularly following Mr. Modi's visit. And suddenly Modi has acquired a kind of Raj Kapoor type image there, which Raj Kapoor used to have in good old Russia. But more importantly, there is a need to consistently engage the region. There is a need to actually play up on the positive sentiment that exists for India in Central Asia. Some say because of the old Mughal connection, because of the old fact that Central Asians had been visiting and trading with India for a long time. A lot of them still visit India. I believe there are more than 50 flights to Central Asia from India and vice versa. What is missing?
I would think that the earlier emphasis in the previous years when Moscow still ruled that part of the world, the emphasis of the past has to be tuned to modern times. In this regard, certainly energy is important. As always, as Stobden was saying, we seem to be late, but I hope we are not late forever. We do have our own infirmities in terms of structures which can interact with the agencies in command in Central Asia. I would hope that the private sector takes a much more active interest in the years to come than it has shown in the past. They are risk averse, but who is not prepared for a risk? Unless you take a risk, the outcomes will not be commensurately high. I believe that the future in terms of where we can go would depend a little bit on security, as Stobden mentioned, but it has to do larger with economic cooperation. For a variety of reasons, we have been isolated from Central Asia, apart from historical and other connectivities. But I think the country demands, not just of the government sector alone, but the larger interests, both public and private, to invest more. We seem to be risk averse. We hope we can get over that and move on to forge ahead. It's a little late in the day, but it's not all that late yet.
Mr. Stobden, Central Asia, as you know, as all of us know, is expected to be a huge energy hotspot, possibly reserves which could be on the size of the Gulf countries or more. It is said that 46% of the world's gas resources are estimated to be there. It is also said that 2 countries, one of them which you were the ambassador to, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, could be huge hydropower producers and water-related energy providers, apart from the resources that are under the ground. Is this overstated? Because I have read in the past that the world went over the top thinking that this was the new El Dorado and everyone went and invested there. And the dictators that are there in all those countries just made bigger and bigger palaces and forgot about the common man. So what's the reality?
I think both are correct. To some extent, this was exaggerated in the 90s by Americans to shift the focus away from Iraq, because they just wanted to deny the focus on Iraq. So the idea was to shift to Caspian and Central Asia. But nonetheless, I think Central Asia has a huge hydrocarbon reserves. And that has been our interest right from beginning. In fact, the ONGC used to have an office in the Indian embassy in Almaty in the 90s itself. But it was very difficult for ONGC Videsh to operate among those sharks. All the American big giants, oil companies used to operate in Caspian and Kazakhstan. Anyway, it's a long story, but we haven't got a single drop of oil from Central Asia as of today. But very significantly, we are missing the point here, is the most promising area of cooperation, which is the uranium supply. I think President Nazarbayev has agreed to renew the contract. and this time he has agreed to supply more than 5,000 million tons, metric tons of ore, concentrate of uranium to India. Now this is significant. This can be the only promising area, and I don't see this is less than oil and gas. You forget about oil and gas because it's very complicated. It's not just about oil exploration, but also getting those oil to India. Both are very complicated geopolitically and technically also. People also say to invest in Central Asia would be far more expensive than invest in Iran, or because Central Asian oil has huge sulfur content. So therefore, I don't think we are going to compete in that. But I think the important aspect is that this uranium supply, which is of course at the minimum level of cooperation, but if it gets deeper, Central Asian countries do not have the maneuvering space to supply to India uranium unlimited way. So they are still controlled under the Russian. So long as we get it, fine. But then in the future, I don't see this is also again going to be.
Well, a lot of important points have emerged in the discussion today. If I was to summarize, there would be 4 or 5. One is the fact that Central Asia is central to Asia, but despite the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's strategic footprint there is very large, even though the Chinese are going well ahead of everybody in investing in the region, and the Chinese, investment apart, continue to make frequent visits there. So if Mr. Modi's recent visit and the euphoria that has followed is to be maintained, India has to engage those countries much more effectively, much more regularly, and not just make investments through the government-led bodies in India, but involve the corporate sector, involve private agencies, and create a much bigger Indian template in those 5 Central Asian states. Equally important is the fact that while Islamic fundamentalism is catching up with certain number of people there, Central Asia is known to have provided some of the largest number of recruits outside the Arab world to the Islamic State. But the Central Asian states essentially remain secular and are certainly not Islamist states in the way certain states in the Arab world and the Islamic world are, which lean to right-wing fundamentalism. And finally, and the most important thing is, while the region has enormous energy resources and enormous natural resources and hydropower resources, the key thing for India to look out for is the uranium supplies that the Central Asian countries can provide to India for a peaceful nuclear program. And Central Asia is not going to wait for India forever to exploit this relationship, for which there is considerable goodwill right now. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us on this show. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, goodbye.